Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all doing well. Today, we're gonna show you how to use natural light to create a cinematic interview shot like this. Now we understand that not everyone can get access to studio lights or artificial lights as part of their equipment kit. However, this does not mean that you can't create cinematic footage. Because our approach today is budget, the camera that we're gonna use is the Canon 200D. This is one of the first camera we owned when we first started doing filmmaking. Honestly, the lighting techniques that we're gonna show you today will work with any camera. So it doesn't matter if you're using an iPhone or a cinema camera. Now step 1 is to place your subject right next to a window. Windows are giant sources of light. As long as the sun doesn't shine directly through the window, the look that you're gonna get from the window is this nice soft light, and this is due to the large surface area of the window itself. Now, the important trick here is knowing where to face your subject. Now, what I see a lot of people do, especially YouTubers, is face 90 degrees from the window towards the camera. While this may work because you're producing light on one side and shadow from the other side, it doesn't necessarily produce the most pleasing look. This is because the light produces an even split lighting on their face, as you can see here, and this look is way too dramatic and should only be used in situations where you want to convey tension or uneasiness. Another mistake I see a lot of beginners do is to have the subject facing the window itself. What this will do is have the light spread evenly on the subject's face. This is actually quite an unflattering look as it makes the subject's face look flat and there are no shadows to create depth. So here's the best way to position where your subject should face. Place them facing 45 degrees away from the window. This will create what famously known as the Rembrandt lighting, where you can observe a triangle on her left cheek. I find this to be the most cinematic way to light her, as it gives a good amount of depth in the shadows and also a good amount of lighting on her face. You can find that this lighting technique is used frequently in documentaries and movies. Now step 2 is to turn off any artificial or ceiling lights that are affecting the lighting of your scene. They're generally quite harsh in their lighting and normally produce a greenish or a yellowish tint that does not look good on your subject. So it's best just to get rid of them when they're affecting your lighting. Step 3 is composition, and there are 2 components to them. The first component is placing your camera on the shadow side of your subject. Shooting the shadow side will create depth in your frame, and it is ultimately what makes your footage look cinematic. This is what it looks like if you're not shooting from the shadow side. In my opinion, the lighting does look a bit flat on her face and it doesn't really create as much depth as when you shoot from the shadow side. The second component is placing the subject on the side of the frame instead of the middle. A great way to this is to use your grid lines. They're there for a reason, and a general rule of thumb is to place your subject's eye line on this upper line right here. This will ensure that there's enough headspace above and below the subject. Now, let me give you some bonus tips that will make this setup look even more cinematic. The first tip I want to give you guys is to really play around with the natural light. Try adding or subtracting light from the scene to make your shot look better. For us, we love to add practical lights such as lamps behind our subject. This will create a better separation between the subject and the background, and therefore creating more depth in your shot. The second tip is that if you find the shadow side of her face to be too dark, you can use a reflector to bounce the light off from the window back towards her face. Now for all those aspiring filmmakers out there, I do recommend getting the newer 5-in-1 reflector, which costs around 20 bucks. And they're really awesome because they consist of multiple reflectors, diffusions, and a negative field as well. Now that brings me to the next tip. If you find that the shadow side of her face is too bright, you can use negative field to create darker shadows and more depth in your shot. And one last thing to watch out for is that because we're using the sun as our key light for our subject, be aware that your exposure could change anytime, especially when a cloud moves into a position where it's blocking the sun. Now you can counter this by putting on a variable anti-filter where you can change your exposure seamlessly. Anyways, that's it for today. I hope that after watching this video, you guys are more confident using natural light to create a cinematic interview setup.
Now, if you want to hear more about our journey of how Jason and I went from complete beginners to full-time filmmakers, please sign up to our email newsletter, link in the description box down below. In our newsletter, we go deep into our story and share all aspects from personal insights, stories, struggles, you name it. We would love to have you in our community. If you thought this video provided you with some value, make sure you hit it with a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell button if you want to be notified of our weekly videos. On this channel, we help beginner filmmakers pursue their passion and get paid.